Yay, another video in the bathtub. Today, we are going to be taking a trip down memory lane and reading some of my old short stories, which I mentioned in my Get to Know Me video, that I used to write short stories and I was going to read them and act them out. I have 4 stories that I was actively writing. All of them have only 2 chapters, except for one of them, which has 12 chapters, so that is not all going in one part. I think I'm only going to read one today. Yeah, I'm only going to read one today. The first one I'm going to read, well, the one I'm going to read today, I titled, I Remember. Show you. Okay, this one only has 2 chapters. The first chapter is pretty long, the second chapter isn't. Okay, this is the description of the story. Ooh, I remember. Written by yours truly. Cassidy woke up in a hospital, shocked to find out she had lost some of her memory. Besides not remembering the very close people to her, she had no idea what happened to her that made her wake up in a hospital. It will be an interesting journey for her to remember all that's happened to her in those last months before her injury, but it will be a shocking ending as to who hurt her and why. Too bad we never find out. Chapter 1. Can I help you? That's the name of the chapter. How old are you? I'm 19, I answered. How are you feeling? Terrible. 2 doctors that had just met surrounded me, asking me tons of questions, necessary only to check that my memory was okay. At least that's what they told me. What's your name? Cassidy Ann Collins. What are your parents' names? Dave and Holly Collins, I answered instantly. I had told them I was up to being interrogated this afternoon after arriving last night. Thankfully, after a while, they decided to give me more rest after saying they saw no signs of memory loss. They left my bedside, going towards the corner of the room to talk. I let my eyes wander around the average-sized room. Everything was plain. The only thing that wasn't an eyesore was the big window that looked over the courtyard. Wow, I'm hard to please apparently. Well, Cassie is. My body shifted in the bed, making me groan from the pain in my side. A nurse rushed towards me. Don't make sudden movements, sweetie. You'll be sore for a while. It was then I noticed the doctors had left me with the nurse. I stared at her for a moment, none of us saying anything. It was almost as if I wanted her to disappear. Rude. Her eyes showed confusion, but her smile never faltered. Are you okay? I nodded briefly, wondering if she'd leave it if I didn't say anything at all. Leave. Wondering if she'd leave if I didn't say anything at all. My curiosity got the best of me though, ruining my plans of staying silent. Shouldn't I be feeling a lot more pain, considering the bruises I have? My voice came out raspy and tired, matching the way I must look. Her eyes held humor. Strong medication, thank goodness for those, huh? My eyebrows rose in amusement. I wanted to laugh at her remark, but knew it would hurt. She rubbed the back of her neck, looking unsure of what to do or say. She must be new. Usually the staff was accustomed to hostility. Okay. A laugh came from outside the door, followed by a nurse peeking her head inside the room. There's a visitor here for you, she told me, then left. I sighed, looking out towards the courtyard, searching for some kind of reassurance. I can tell them you're not up for visitors at the moment, she trailed off, waiting for my answer. I'm fine, send them in. She nodded before leaving the room. My body relaxed into the bed, and I slowly let my eyes close. Not long after my eyes closed, the door creaked, telling me it was being opened. The person almost sounded hesitant on entering. Oh my, a warm, deep voice said. My face wrinkled in confusion. The voice wasn't familiar. Cassidy? My eyes opened at the sound of my name, showing a guy around my age in front of my bed. My eyes narrowed at him as he moved to put his hands on the edge of my bed. His eyes held sorrow as he took in my appearance. I watched as he visibly tensed in front of me. He bit his knuckles, pacing around the room, cursing to himself. At any other time, I'd make fun of someone for talking to themselves, but right now, I was utterly confused as to why he was here. She's quite the character. How do you approach someone who looks upset? Can I help you? His head shot up at my words. Happiness crossed his features before a frown took its place. Cass, he walked towards me, examining my features. Are you feeling okay? That time he used my nickname, like a friend would. I watched him closely as he waited for my answer. He acted as if my answer could make or break him. I nodded my head, which made my skull ache devilishly. I gritted my teeth. Ouch. He grimaced, looking towards the partially open door. He sighed, I can't breathe. He sighed, running his hands down his face before turning to me. Want the nurse? I didn't respond, just sat there. He watched me for a long time before he moved to lean against the wall opposite of my bed. Please don't hate me. His gray eyes showed vulnerability. His gray eyes showed vulnerability. He must think my lack of words were because of anger. Why would I hate you? He bit his bottom lip, looking at the ceiling. The door opened suddenly, cutting him off. The nurse from before walked in, coming towards me. Sorry to interrupt, it's time for some more pain medication. A sigh of relief escaped my lips as I watched her go her way about the room. My eyes caught sight of her name tag, Dana. She made small talk with the guy while I sat there anticipating the moment when I'd be pain-free. Should kick in any minute now, she smiled at us, then left the room. The guy stayed in the same position against the wall with his head in his hands. My eyes looked him over, just as he did to me before. His tall, slightly lean figure could easily tower over my small frame. His dark hair looked as if his hands had run through it multiple times out of frustration or habit. A tattoo showed from the open spot of his hoodie. All that I could make out of it was that it was some sort of symbol taking place on his back, peeking out onto his shoulder. It made him look mysterious, especially with the dark scheme of colors he wore today. From his body language and slumped over posture, he looked completely and utterly distressed. Sorry to interrupt, said a voice from the door, making our heads snap to it. My eyes rolled when I realized the voice belonged to a nurse. She was younger than the others, but she came in with a tray of food that I had asked for half an hour ago. She placed it on my side table, not neglecting to steal glances at the guy standing against the wall. He didn't seem to notice her fondness of him until she finally voiced her thoughts. He's handsome. She said this comment to me, but in the quiet room he could no doubt hear her too. A blank expression took its place on my face. While the young nurse tried to get me to agree with her, using an expectant smile, the guy cleared his throat. Thank you, he said unsurely, looking at me as if asking for permission to talk to her. My eyebrows raised at him as I watched the awkward scene take place in front of me. They looked at each other, then at me, both holding different expressions. The nurse mumbled something quickly to me which sounded like, "I thought he was your boyfriend," then left the room blushing. I laid my head back against the pillow, yawning uncaringly. When I lifted my head back up, I noticed he had moved to stand at the side of my bed. Sorry about that. I didn't think she'd... He trailed off, looking around the room, searching for words to say. She's fond of you. No harm in that. He looked at me weirdly, like what I said was in a different language. You act like you don't know me, he chuckled lightly. I shrugged, frowning as I shook my head. He stopped laughing and looked at me, all humor gone from his face, replaced with seriousness. You don't know who I am? He asked carefully, sitting in the chair beside the bed, never leaving my eyes. I must have offended him, so I quickly thought of where I'd known him from. You're probably one of my dad's coworkers, right? He blinked a few times, looking at the floor, seeming struck by my words. He shook his head as a sharp breath escaped his mouth. No one said anything for a while. I just sat there and watched him battle internally for his next words. I turned my attention back towards the window at the courtyard. I watched the different people going about their day, talking to their family members who were patients at this hospital. One lady was in a wheelchair bundled up in blankets to keep warm, while she pushed by an older gentleman. She had a little girl on her lap. They were smiling as they took laps around the courtyard. Without realizing it, a smile had crept its way onto my face. My mood changed from frustrated to relaxed. I turned back to the guy only to see him watching me. He seemed ready to say whatever it was he was battling with himself to say. Patiently, I waited for him to speak. After a while, he sighed, looking at me with a longing expression. I'm your boyfriend. He waited, watching for my reaction. Anticipation crossed his features before desperation took its place. I turned my head away from him, looking at my hands. My relaxed mood had shifted back to frustrated, though it did not show on my face. There were many ways to react to news like this, even many things to say back. Easily I could yell at him for being a liar, or cry for not remembering, maybe even reacted completely and utterly shocked, or laughed in his face for a great joke. None of those would have fit to portray what I was feeling about hearing the news, which was confusion. The only things that were circulating in my brain were questions I've been asking ever since I woke up. Why am I in the hospital? What else did I not remember? Will I ever gain my memory back? He just seemed like any other missing piece of the puzzle. My head turned so I could meet his eyes. The amount of sorrow they held could have touched anyone at that moment. It wasn't fair to him that I didn't remember, but it wasn't fair to me either. He didn't seem to be waiting for my reaction anymore. He had taken my silence as the only thing I'd give him. Neither of us had the words, so we stayed in silence for what felt like a long time. His gray eyes never rid themselves of sorrow, which I couldn't blame him for. He breathed in deeply before standing and leaving my bedside to grab a bag that was near the doorway. He pulled out a little teddy bear that was attached to some roses. I watched him put it on my side table without meeting my eyes. My leg is frozen. I'm trying to sit as straight as possible. I can't. Oh man. Oh. I watched him put it on my side table without meeting my eyes. He was about to step out of my room before he turned to look at me. The longing expression evident in his eyes before I could look away, he left. My eyes drifted from the door to the teddy bear that was next to me. I grabbed it, examining its soft fur. My fingers ran over the roses before my eyes caught sight of an envelope. I grabbed it, eager to see what it said. You're a strong girl, Cassidy. That's what I admire most about you. I don't know what I'd do if I lost you. Signed, Ethan. End of the chapter. Next chapter. Final chapter. It's not as long. It's called Jell-O Tastes Disgusting. What? The first rational thing I could think of doing was to put the card back down and grab a carton of Jell-O. Yeah. I ate in my own silence, trying not to replay what my leg, you know the tingly part when your leg falls asleep? Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I ate in my own silence, trying not to replay what happened a few moments ago in my head, but failed miserably. Every time I got the part of confession, the stunned feeling came back to me. Only now I could show it. I finished the first Jell-O with little difficulty. The second was going to be harder to eat. The taste nauseated me, but yet I never stopped trying to make myself like it. Forcing myself to eat Jell-O made me forget about everything except its artificial taste. It was a weird way to distract myself, but it was a way that worked. Sometimes. The only thing I was thinking about ended up always being the mysterious guy. That meant the Jell-O wasn't working, but in a weird way I didn't want it to. Make up your mind. My eyes traveled back to the card that was laying open next to the bear and Jell-O. Ethan. I wished to remember him for his sake. His eyes had shown so much sadness. I couldn't ignore this. Him, not even if it made things easier on myself. Throughout the hours, I was left with only my thoughts. That was until my door was pushed open by my doctor. You have visitors. I would have voiced my disappointments aloud when my parents entered the room, but instead I chose a fake smile to greet them. Every concerned look and sympathetic question from them seemed fake to not only me, but the nurse Dana too. The difference was, I knew it was fake, while Dana might have thought my parents were just extremely dramatic. By 7:04, exactly 1 hour upon arrival, my parents stayed there for a while. I'm assuming 7 p.m. I didn't specify, but... Then finally left 20 minutes later after feeling confident they'd show deep concern for my well-being. For my actually. I didn't say well-being, but I think that's what I meant. It wasn't until after my mom's excessive crying did the doctor leave me to be scolded. The whole time I hardly listened to them or the doctor. The visit did not help my already stressed state of mind. I really need more Jell-O. No, you don't. Oh my gosh. A squeak came from the door, pulling me out of my odd cravings. The door opened, followed by my doctor who was holding his clipboard. When his eyes landed on me, he showed me a smile before he opened the door completely, revealing 2 cops who were standing there. He led them inside and in front of my bed. Patiently, I watched them, waiting for someone to say something. My doctor was the first to speak. Cassidy, I believe your injuries were caused by another person. There wasn't a response to give them, so I settled with a blank expression. Can you think of anybody who would hurt you? Asked the male cop. My head shook at them. My doctor turned to them saying, Cassidy has experienced a memory loss from this accident. My eyebrows raised at that statement. Only a few hours ago he said I was fine. The only way for him to know that would be if he talked to Ethan. The female cop narrowed her eyes at me. So you have no recollection of what happened at all? I nodded in response. She looked down to write something in her notebook, then turned to her partner. He stood back to her, whispering to my doctor. After they finished, my doctor rose his hands to his chin. He nodded before leaving the room. Terror stirred in the pit of my stomach, making me want to vomit. I sucked in my gut and tried my best to keep my face from showing horror. It took even more effort for me to keep my breathing steady. Are you alright? Asked the female cop harshly. Yes, I said through gritted teeth. What's the last thing you remember before waking up? I remember I paused for a brief second to think, driving to a house, I don't know whose or where it's at, or what I did there, then driving away. I remember nothing after that. The female cop approached my bed. Nothing else? That's what I said. Utter annoyance crossed her features before she opened her mouth to say something. Her partner beat her to it though. Thank you for your cooperation. His partner turned to him angrily. That's it? He nodded in response, making her turn on her heel and leave the room, muttering to herself, big waste of time. The male cop left behind her, not before sending me an apologetic look. Both a sigh of relief and annoyance escaped me after the door closed. With the new comforting silence starting to settle, I chipped away at my nails. It wasn't until the sound of a knock on the door did I look up from my fingers. It had dawned on me that was the first time someone had done that out of the whole time I've been here. Knocked. I was so used to people just barging in and out, doctors, nurses, police. This was new. It made more sense when Mystery Guy opened the door and came in, avoiding my eyes entirely. I was just about to head home and I saw those police officers leaving your room. He rubbed the back of his neck nervously. I just thought I'd check on you because I know you get shaky when you're alone with them. His eyes were focused on the ground and that allowed me to show how shocked I was with him without him seeing. I was just going to go home and do nothing, but he trailed off, meeting my eyes. By then, my shocked expression had turned to one of curiosity. It's okay, I'm glad you came in actually. His face lit up as he straightened from his slightly slouched stance and walked towards me. Do you want me to do something for you? I nodded and moved myself into a sitting position. I gritted my teeth as my sore muscles screamed in protest. Once I situated myself, I turned to him, interlinking my fingers together and settled them on my lap. He sat in the chair next to me and waited for me to speak. My whole demeanor had changed, making him almost seem excited or happy. His eyes held a sparkle, all from just asking for his help. I was wondering if you could help me answer a few questions that have been nagging at me. His eyes softened at my request, making me try my next approach in a less businesslike manner. I just want some answers, I said, a little desperation showing on my face. He nodded, signaling me to continue. For starters, why did you ask me not to hate you? My question surprised him. I rose my eyes at him to question his reaction. He shook his head. I've been keeping my distance from you. Well, before this. He gestured to our surroundings, looking ashamed. For good reason? I'd say so, he sighed. But I made you frustrated. He watched for my questioning eyes, but they never came. Oh, I remember. Okay, that's it. I remember where I was going with it. He was gonna propose. The reason why she's in the hospital is because he had a dark past and it came back to haunt him, very original obviously, and they went after her, and yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, my camera's literally about to die. This flashing, this dying battery.